I have 5 tips for you to write essay questions that cannot be answered by Chat GPT. Hi! I know why you clicked on this video. No, I don't know. I'm Michi, a 4th year PhD student at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, and I'm an instructor for undergrad college classes. As you might have noticed last semester, lots of students were discovering the new Chat GPT, using it for their essays, and it made us teachers a little bit worried about what's the future of writing essays. What will our work look like in the future? I'm here to tell you, you don't have to worry about it too much. I have 5 tips for you to write essay questions that cannot be answered by ChatGPT. So in my last class that I taught, I think I was pretty successful in not getting many responses where students actually did use it. I'm pretty sure that a few of them still did, and I think I know how to get around it this next semester that I'm teaching. So let's get started. Number 1, in your essay, make sure that your students have to include some kind of personal comparison to whatever they're writing. This can be bigger or smaller in extent, but the more they're talking about themselves, the more they'll have to come up with it themselves, because obviously ChatGPT doesn't know anything about your students. For this, you have to know a little bit about them yourself, but this was my first semester teaching my students, and I think I knew enough about them through just talking with them during class, having conversations, that I knew whether a personal story that they were going to write was theirs or not theirs. So this is one thing. Make sure that they have to include some kind of personal comparison, and that can also be in the form of some kind of evaluation of what they were supposed to demonstrate, what skills they were supposed to demonstrate. So for example, my class was a class about theories of language learning. So in one of my essays, I asked my students to apply what they learned about language learning theories to their own language learning journey. And I knew for every single student what languages they had learned before or they were learning currently. I knew about how good they are at each language, so I knew whether what they were gonna write made sense or not. So yeah, make sure to have something like that, but that alone won't help you. So there's step number 2, or tip number 2. Make sure to include a rubric that is very specific to your class. Because you can't put rubrics, documents that are in the form of tables, into ChatGPT, so they can't give ChatGPT your rubric and have it write something that's gonna score well. And then you can have each rubric category about something that your class was about. So I think some of the rubric categories for my class were pretty simple, just saying, you talked about something we talked about in class. Not phrased like that, but in essence, that's what it was. Or you wrote about something that came up in a reading multiple times. So I know for sure that if they're writing about some random language learning strategy that we hadn't even talked about, that they probably got their answers off the internet or ChatGPT. With that, you can also test whether they paid attention in your class or not, or whether they can look back through the class materials or not, which is also good. Usually, those students that I suspect used ChatGPT did not do well in this section, or in these sections at all, actually. But to make sure to have another step of security in there, here's tip number 3. Make sure that your essay question requires them to write about something that you know about. I heard in a workshop on ChatGPT that a professor was worried that their student is going to write an essay about poetry in Eastern Asia, and it's just going to come out as a perfect essay, and the professor doesn't really know whether that was written by ChatGPT or by the student, because it was just a topic of the student's choice. You can have the topic be the student's choice, but it should still be something related to what you know, enough for you to be able to gauge whether the knowledge they put down is very, very general, which is common for ChatGPT, or specific enough for the student to show that they have been in your class. So in my case, when my students wrote something about language learning is a difficult journey, many face struggles as it requires a lot of motivation and self-control, then I know the student probably used ChatGPT or wasn't sure what to write at all. Definitely is not going to get a good score because it has nothing to do with our class, because we did not talk about motivation. We did not really talk about, well, we talked about struggles, but just struggles in general is just way too general. And we did not talk about any kind of what was the word again? About any kind of self-regulation. But that's something that's very general about language learning and definitely a lot on the internet, which is why ChatGPT would talk about it. So yeah, make sure that it's something specific that you know about and that you know you've taught the students about, so that they can't just write anything about it, about a topic of their choice. But in addition to all of that, let's also do tip number 4. Here's tip number 3. Require citations. ChatGPT, I think, still does not know how to use citations or how to... ChatGPT does not insert citations for you. So if you require them, especially off the readings that you've read in your class, your student is forced to read your readings and put them at least into a text that ChatGPT wrote, and they're going to notice none of it is going to align, so they have to write their own text if they want to put in the references that they need to. Be sure that you require the citations in the rubric, so that everything that they don't do, they're gonna lose points. And then even if they use ChatGPT and write a super nice essay, but it has nothing to do with the class, it doesn't have anything to do with their personal life, it doesn't have any citations, then they won't get points for it just because it's not in the rubric. You can also tell them how it's not possible to write a good essay using ChatGPT with the rubric you give them, but if they still do, they'll just get a really bad grade because you can't give them points according to the rubric. I still have an extra tip for you. If you're still not sure, if you still think your students might betray you using ChatGPT, here's the last tip. If you're using a rubric, you can have your students annotate their self-written text, the text that they wrote, in a way that you can see where they attempted to fulfill each rubric category. So they can highlight this part and say, oh, this is where I'm talking about our readings in the text, which is one of the rubric categories. This is where I have my citations. These are the citations that I have. Just some kind of annotation that shows that they wrote the text themselves, that they used the rubric to write their text. And if they didn't, this is the point where they're going to notice that they might not get many points because they can't find any, text passages that they can annotate that correspond to any rubric category. And if you don't have a rubric, which I always advise you to have because it's really important for grading transparency, and it gives each student the same chance to do well on your class, or it helps with that, then you can still have your students annotate their text in a different way. For example, if your focus is on text composition, you can have your students annotate the composition, maybe saying, oh, look, this is my introduction, this is my first argument, this is my second argument, this is my conclusion, these are my connection sentences or connector sentences, something like that. Or whatever you think the focus should be on, you can have your students annotate that part. And that should be good then. So I hope that these 5 tips really help you come up with a task that's not possible to answer using ChatGPT, and hopefully you can use it for your next class. If you still have questions, let me know. I'm very happy to answer them. And if this helped you, if this video helped you in any way, make sure to hit the subscribe button. It really helps us. Thank you so much. See you in another video.